Hey everybody. So just like the Letitia Stalk trial, I wanted to come on here and give you weekly recaps of everything that has gone down in the Lori Vallow trial. Because again, like Letitia Stalk, I know that most of us don't have 40 hours plus a week to watch the trial ourselves, not to mention when two huge trials are going on simultaneously, 80 hours to rewatch all of that footage. So I wanted to jump on here and give you all of the breakdowns for what happened in weeks of the trial week to week. Not only for Letitia, but now also for Lori. So if you haven't been following Letitia and you want to catch up on that, those videos are all in my feed on my channel. And what I'm using it for is really just to summarize the big key highlights, the big takeaways, any revelations in a very condensed version. So again, you don't have to sift through all of the, 40 plus hours of trial footage yourself to figure out what happened. That way you're prepared as we enter the following week of trial and you're fully caught up. So that being said, welcome to week one summary for the trial. And I honestly was wondering and beginning to wonder if it would ever happen, this trial, but it is finally here. The ever so infamous doomsday cult mom of the century, Lori Vallow Daybell. Lori is charged in Idaho with conspiracy and murder in connection with the deaths of her two children, Tylee and JJ, and her new husband, Chad Daybell's late wife, Tammy. Additionally, she is charged with grand theft for collecting money on the children's Social Security after they were murdered. Lovely, lovely lady, right? Lori also faces charges in Arizona with conspiracy to murder her fourth husband, Charles Vallow, but that trial will take place after this current one in Idaho. She has pleaded not guilty to all of these charges, and the trial officially began on April 3rd, with jury selection lasting throughout the week, but for these trial updates, again, I'm going to count this as the first week, and then the next week as the second week, and so on and so forth, moving forward. The jury is made up of 10 men and 8 women, so 18 jurors in total. This gives 6 alternates throughout the trial before the final 12 are randomly selected to deliberate. The trial won't be televised, and there aren't even cameras for photography allowed in the courtroom. The best picture we could get is from the sketch artist that a few news outlets hired. The audio from each day is available, but it is not live streamed and is instead released at the end of each day. Now, I will be honest, the audio quality is honestly a little disappointing, but beggars can't be choosers at this point, so I'm just glad that we have something to go off of. But even without the trial televised or seeing any photos of the proceedings in real time, this week has been nothing short of shocking, graphic, upsetting, and sometimes straight up chilling. Now, I also have a contact who has been in the courtroom, and they have been sending text messages with real-time updates of what's been going on. So as we continue to go throughout this video and go through these recaps, I will be sharing those text messages on the screen, which are a first-hand account of what's happening inside that courtroom. So without further ado, my name is Elise, this is 10 to Life, and let's get right into it.
This is 10 to Life with Elise.
Money, power, and sex. That's really what this case is about, which were the words from prosecutor Lindsay Blake during her very powerful opening statement. The opening statement is generally what we can expect the prosecution to use to prove throughout the trial, or what the jury can expect to see. And Lindsay Blake did not mince words here, so get ready because this is a lot. She continued with, "This case starts in 2018, when the two met at a Preparing a People event in St. George, Utah. Lori and Chad decided that the day they met that they knew each other in multiple probations, which means past lives. Looney Tunes. They believed spirits were light and dark. They held castings where they would essentially pray to cast out evil spirits on those dark spirits. And the common theme was that the body had to be destroyed. She continued by detailing how Tylee had lost her father and was getting Social Security benefits from it. JJ Vallow had also lost his father and became more difficult to handle. Tammy Daybell was a 49-year-old mother of 5, and Chad Daybell had life insurance policy on his wife, which he had increased it shortly before her death. Then it got darker with the discovery of the children's bodies. All that was left of Tylee was charred remains. JJ was found wrapped in duct tape and garbage bags around his arms, legs, and face. Tammy died, and Lori and Chad were photographed in Hawaii 17 days later, kissing, smiling, getting married as if nothing had ever happened. Then the prosecution described Lori's brother Alex, saying that he would do anything for his sister. He was a warrior and was here to protect Lori. When Lori would talk about people being light or dark, she would speak of her daughter being dark. And she said that later in the trial, we would hear from someone who heard Tylee tell Lori that she isn't a dark spirit or a zombie, pleading with her mother to say, I'm not a dark spirit, I'm not a zombie, Mom, like it's me, Tylee. And it was the same with JJ. Lori said he was dark and possessed, and Lori thought that she was a translated being and taught others that they were being translated. She manipulated people. Then the first bombshell dropped after Tammy was approached by a man with a gun in a camouflage suit on October 9th, 2019. Lori is angry and states he can't do anything right, which, I wonder what that means. Cough, cough, Alex, her henchman, as I refer to him as. We will also hear about how Chad introduced Lori to his kids and his neighbors, and we will also hear from those neighbors about how Chad couldn't keep his hands off of her, and how he explained how Lori had a daughter, but that she recently died, and there was no mention of JJ at all. We also hear about how vital malachite is to Lori and Chad, and how they started looking for malachite rings. And Chad also explains on rental applications for new digs for he and Lori that they have no minor children. After the welfare check on JJ, she moved out of her apartment and to Hawaii with Chad. While they enjoyed their new life in Hawaii, a nationwide search for the children ensued. She lied about her location, her whereabouts, and the whereabouts of JJ and Tylee. She told her best friend, Melanie Gibb, to lie to police about where JJ was. And then the second bombshell dropped. Tammy Daybell didn't die mysteriously, not at all, and not of natural causes. In fact, she died at the hands of another, and the cause was death by asphyxiation. Then the prosecution described when JJ was found. His hands were bound and duct taped in front of his body. And the prosecution showed very disturbing photos to the jury. Now here's a message from my contact. The whole courtroom was shown all of the evidence. Started off today with Tylee's remains, JJ and what was found, and the close-up on his hand being duct taped, and Tammy as she was exhumed. They showed a picture of JJ's hand, a picture of Tammy's, and then the infamous Hawaii photos of which Tammy and Chad were holding hands, and it was just focused on their hands, saying it was these hands that committed these murders. Now it was time for the defense to give their opening statements, and I'm just going to say it. I don't know what exactly I was expecting from the defense's opening statement, but it was not this. Jim Archibald started out by saying that Lori was raised in California and lived in Idaho for less than a month. Then the conversation took a turn and went into religious freedom in this country. This led to Lori believes in life after death and believes she will see her deceased children again, saying that people are attracted to Lori and want to be around her vivacious personality. I hate that word, vivacious. He also says that evidence will show that she was a kind and a loving mother and is interested in religion and the end of times and biblical prophecies. Evidence will show that once Lori and friends met Chad, her beliefs began to change, and that's where the stories diverge. Now, really quick, I didn't add in that she was a good mother. These are her attorney's own words. Throughout the opening statement, he continually referenced Lori in the past tense when describing Lori was a loving mom, was a good mom, etc., which I just felt was very interesting. Maybe a tactic to kind of bolster that she ended up changing because of Chad, but we'll see. Then Archibald said that the conspiracy charges are from Chad, Lori, and Alex, but that Chad is not on trial, and Alex is dead and not on trial, so that jurors should focus on Lori and not the actions of Chad and Alex. Then he asks, so the question is, did Lori kill? Insist? Encourage? Command? This conspiracy charge is technically saying they don't know what happened. Did she do something? Did she talk about something? That's the challenge for the jury, and they'll need to be convinced beyond reasonable doubt. A very common defense strategy, similar to what we saw in the Murdaugh trial, where it's like, oh, you don't have him on the video killing Maggie and Paul, so how do you know? Which, I get it. Everyone has to have a defense, and I guess that when you're guilty, that's just the go-to. I don't know. That's just my opinion. Then he went into Lori's alibis that were filed on Lori's behalf, stating that she was in her apartment when Tylee and JJ were killed in Alex's apartment, and that she was with Melanie Gibb, David Warwick, or Chad, and that when Tammy died, she was in Hawaii with Melanie Pulowski, her niece, and another woman named Audrey. So we have a lot to get through here, and I have a ton of thoughts on all of this, but I'm going to save them until the end of this video because we will never get through this if I don't. I'm just going to go off the rails. Now here's a message according to my contact who's in the courtroom. Lori made eye contact with me at least twice before looking back at her notepads or the jury. Right when the trial started with opening statements, when they showed the photos of Tylee and JJ and how they were found, she looked a little misty. You could see Lori's feet were shackled, but onto the desk. Lori has shown up every day this week with business professional outfits that we had been told had been provided by her attorneys. She has had her famous Lori waves every day, and her hair has been down. Every morning she is shown up and ready for court. She is often seen chatting, smiling, and laughing with her attorneys. She likes to look into the gallery before a court and makes eye contact with those in the courtroom. During breaks, Lori is seen looking out the window or chatting with one of her security guards placed around her. During testimony, she's often writing notes. She's very involved with her attorneys. She makes eye contact with the jury during testimony. If the evidence is being shown that Lori doesn't agree with, she'll put her head down and not look at all. She does show emotion several times. Day 1, opening statements. Day 2, when discussing the findings of JJ and Tylee. And Day 4, with Melanie Gibb, is when we saw her get frustrated, unhappy, or upset. So the first witness was Kay Woodcock, JJ's biological grandmother. Apparently throughout this whole thing, Lori was watching Kay intensely. Kay explains that they received custody of their grandson JJ, then named Kanan, as a newborn due to drugs in his system. Charles wanted to adopt him and asked Kay. Kay explains that she and Larry wanted to adopt JJ, but felt that Charles and Lori's atmosphere was more conducive to a baby. JJ had some health issues too, and Louisiana didn't have the best school system for special needs children. So she said that Charles and Lori seemed to have a good energy. Charles was in shape and could run circles around 25-year-olds even. Lori is 17 years younger. Larry is older. So Kay and Larry debated and chose to go forward with it due to Charles and Lori's lifestyle. They were active in the community and in the church. JJ would have siblings, etc. So Kanan's name was changed to JJ after the adoption. Part of the adoption request was maintaining a relationship as JJ's grandparents, and they wanted to remain a big part of his life, and they did. Kay met Lori's family, her parents, her siblings, and specifically met Alex Cox a handful of times. Kay and Larry continued to visit JJ in Hawaii and Arizona. She said Lori was a good mom, an engaged mom, and would reinforce to JJ that Larry and Kay were JJ's grandparents. She was quoted as saying, "She was a good mom from everything I could see. Charles was hands-on and had JJ when he was home from business." She describes how in 2019, Charles called Kay and explained that he and Lori were splitting up. He was distraught and Kay went to help with JJ because Lori was gone. Kay nor Charles knew where Lori was, and Kay says that Lori was gone for 58 days, and that she was there with Charles for roughly 30 of those days, helping him with JJ, and that they never heard from Lori while she was away. Kay took JJ to Louisiana, back and forth to Arizona, and eventually Charles moved to Houston, which was 150 miles from Kay. Kay said that she would go to Houston to stay with JJ for a few days at a time while Charles worked as a financial planner and had to travel occasionally for business. Kay started helping Charles with his payroll and business, and she had access to Charles' emails and banking info and other financial information. Now, Charles was intending to divorce Lori, but it was never finalized because at one point it seemed to Charles that maybe there was hope in getting back together and what's the word I'm looking for? Reconnecting, but not reunifying, repairing, whatever the word I'm looking for, guys. I don't know. But you get what I'm saying. He thought that there was still a possibility they could work things out and get back together. So she talked about Charles' life insurance policy, and she said that one day Charles called and asked Kay to be his beneficiary. He requested that Kay use that money to raise JJ because Lori didn't want him anymore, and also to give some of the money to his adult sons, which she stated she did. After Charles's death, Kay states that she received money within a week after his death because the insurance company called her. Lori contacted Kay by text after Kay received that money. Now, if you haven't watched the part 1 video about Lori and Chad on my podcast, or listened to it on my podcast seriously, I also have the video version on my channel here. If you haven't watched that part 1 yet, I highly, highly encourage you to check it out because we go way more in depth about Charles's life insurance policy in that video and what really went down. So the last time Kay saw JJ was at his birthday party in 2019. Then she had a phone call or two after that, and after Charles passed away on July 11th, 2019. Kay said that Lori agreed that JJ could attend Charles's memorial service in Louisiana, and they had tickets to Phoenix to pick JJ up and fly to Louisiana, then have him for a week and fly him back. But JJ didn't attend. At the last minute, Lori wouldn't let him go. All of the FaceTimes or the phone calls with JJ after that were extremely unusual. She said that JJ normally has the phone and walks around, but this time he didn't have the phone. Someone was holding the phone for him, and it was a very short call. JJ would look up at whoever was holding the phone, and they seemed to tell him what to do. That FaceTime lasted maybe 45 seconds. The next time they FaceTimed, JJ was in a bad mood. And then the last FaceTime was August 10th, 2019, and it was short again, and he was not holding the phone, and he said, "Hello, Mama," "Hello, Papa," and then JJ looked at a person who was holding the phone and stated that he had to go. That was the last time she ever spoke to JJ. Then Kay talks about how one day she woke up at 4:30 in the morning to fix a broken scanner, but while on Gmail, she saw Charles's icon on her computer screen. She clicked it and was able to sign into his Gmail account. That's when she saw this weird order confirmation delivery from Amazon to Rexburg, Idaho, for that malachite wedding band. She went to Amazon to look into it more and could see on the account history that there were searches for a beach wedding dress, a large men's white linen shirt, and white pants. She was shocked by this. After Kay saw what she did, she called Brandon Boudreau. This was after Charles's death, but before Tammy Daybell's death. Next, the state called Brandon, whose ex-wife is Melanie Pulowski, Lori's niece. In the videos for part 1 and part 2 of the Lori and Chad saga that I mentioned that are on my podcast, but they're also on here if you want the video version, I didn't go into Brandon and Melanie that much. Not much at all, because the story is already so wildly confusing to begin with, and by entering new players into it, it just gets even more confusing. But we're going to talk about some of the breakdown here. So Brandon and Melanie were married for 10 years and had 4 kids together. Brandon discussed knowing Lori's parents and siblings and spending a lot of time with Lori and Charles and knowing them well. He discussed spending a lot of time with Tylee and watching her grow up, and he had a religious connection to Tylee and baptized Tylee into the LDS faith when Tylee turned 8 years old. Brandon explains that his ex-wife Melanie thought of Lori more as a mother figure than an aunt. Brandon says that Melanie was learning to go to the LDS temple every single day, which is apparently not normal in the LDS faith. He said that Melanie's newfound religious beliefs and meetings that she was attending were extreme and that they were not sponsored by the LDS faith. Brandon was not invited to attend, and Melanie made it clear she didn't want Brandon to come to these meetings, which they called firesides. So Charles started telling Brandon, apparently, that he was being accused of cheating by Lori, and this took a huge toll on the family's relationships. Melanie didn't want to take any sides, and Charles would come over to Brandon's house to play with JJ and play with Brandon's kids and confide in Brandon. On June 23rd, Brandon's grandfather had passed, and he told Melanie, and Melanie didn't want to go to the funeral, and this also created a big issue. He apologized and said he'd accept her not going to the grandpa's funeral and wanted to make things work with her. But Melanie accused Brandon then of being a homosexual. Then Melanie and Brandon got a divorce, and Melanie's behavior completely changed. Then, fast forward to October 2nd, 2019, someone shot at Brandon. He says after dropping his kids off and going to the gym, he came back to his new house. Brandon noticed a Jeep Wrangler with no tire sitting outside of his driveway with Texas license plates. Then the window in the back of the Jeep became visible, and he saw a gun pointed out of the window with what looked like a silencer on it. A shot was fired and Brandon's car window was shattered, so he kept driving instead of pulling into his driveway, and he called 911. He was able to get the VIN number because he was an insurance agent, and he provided it to law enforcement. He believed that the Jeep was the one that Tylee drove. So he researched online and started reading emails from people who went to these fireside meetings with Melanie. And he found emails from Chad at Daybell. He also found Tammy Daybell's obituary online. So he reported it to law enforcement because he felt like something was wrong. He also had learned that JJ and Tylee were now missing. The defense asked Brandon about Melanie accusing Brandon of being a homosexual. Brandon said that they were in Utah staying at Melanie's parents' house, and she said God told her that Brandon was gay. The defense then questions if there were any other reasons for Melanie's accusations of him being gay, like a video of him dancing. And Brandon states that the dancing video wasn't the reason for the original accusation. Then the state called Detective Ray to the stand. Gilbert police initially called Detective Ray to do intermittent surveillance until locating the Jeep that shot at Brandon, which led back to Charles's name from the VIN number. But Charles had passed away at this point, so it must have been somebody else driving that Jeep. During surveillance, they saw Chad and Lori walking into Lori's apartment. They never had any children with them, anytime during this surveillance. Now, at this point, they weren't really looking for the children. They were just following up on the Jeep that shot at Brandon. The Jeep was seized on November 4th, and then on November 19th, Gilbert police received a call about JJ. They didn't know that JJ was missing, but his grandparents, Larry and Kay, wanted to check on JJ, and she wanted a welfare check. They went there on November 26th. Alex stated that JJ was with Kay in Louisiana, but the detective was like, actually, well, no, he's not, because she's the one who's requesting this welfare check. What are you talking about? Which, big oops there, Alex. Then Alex said that Lori wasn't home and that he didn't have her phone number. After this welfare check, they went back again to make contact with Lori. Another detective, Detective Hopem, began knocking on doors next door. While that was going on, Chad started driving toward him, and then he stopped Chad. He asked Chad when the last time was that he saw JJ. Chad stated that the last time he saw JJ was in October, in Lori's apartment, and that Chad hardly knew Lori and had only met Lori a couple of times. But the detectives already knew that Chad and Lori were married a couple of weeks before. Chad said he didn't have Lori's number, and when he was confronted about why he didn't give her number, Chad said he felt he was being accused of something, which, hello, I wonder why, Chad, I wonder why. It was clear to the detectives that something was obviously wrong with the lies and the lack of answers. The detectives came back once they got the search warrant for Lori's apartment. They broke down the front door, and inside, they found furniture, dishes in the sink, and food in the pantry and fridge, but there weren't any clothes on hangers or any clothing in the closets. The only thing they found of evidence with JJ on it was on the porch and a prescription bottle. In the garage of Lori's apartment, there were several guns, knives, magazines for various weapons, silencers, a ghillie suit, which is one of those camouflage suits where you look like grass, a Tyvek suit like the kind Dexter wore, a Walmart bag with rope and duct tape inside of it, handguns, rifles, etc. Alex's apartment was completely vacant, except for some papers for a storage unit in Lori's name, where officers found toys, family photos, and children's blankets. Detective Hermosillo talked about how, as the search for the children continued, they located Lori and Chad in Hawaii. He went to Kauai to assist the Kauai police, and Kauai PD searched the condo where, you guessed it, there was no sign or evidence of the kids being there. He discussed the last photos taken of Tylee and JJ, the one on September 8th of Tylee in Yellowstone, and the one of JJ on the 22nd of September with JJ on the couch in his pajamas. Now we're going to go into June 9th, 2020, the day that Tylee and JJ were discovered on Chad's property. The detective got there around 7 a.m. Mark Daybell answered the door eating cereal. Detectives told him why they were there, and Mark said that his dad was still asleep. So they went into Chad's room, Chad woke up, got dressed, and then called his attorney. So Chad sat in a recliner, close to the door, reviewing the search warrant. He asked if he needed to leave or if his children needed to. The kids decided to leave anyways, and Chad went to his car to make a phone call. FBI, Fremont County, Rexburg Police, Idaho Attorney General were all part of the search warrant. The detective watched Chad while he was in the car with his phone in his hands and intently looking over his right shoulder, looking in the direction of a tree and a pond. The search team started digging, and they first removed the top layer of soil by the pond area by the tree, the same pond and tree that Chad was staring at. And that's when the searchers first smelled the stench of a decaying body. There were rocks underneath, so they removed those, and underneath that they found wood panels, so they removed that as well. The soil underneath was different, and it was moist. Now I'm going to play some of what the detective said in court about how the children were found, but I want to give a warning. This is extremely graphic.
Also in this photograph is the fire pit that is sectioned off that we were also going through, and the blue tarps, anything of interest or evidentiary value that we dug out of the ground were placed on the blue tarps. As I testified earlier, when we began digging down, we could notice the difference in soil from dry soil to a moist soil, and we started to get into clumps of rotted flesh, charred flesh, and this is starting to get down into the rotted flesh and the charred flesh. There's a piece of broken charred bone sticking up through the dirt, and that's what that photograph is. As we began digging down and the flesh and bone began coming out of the ground, we had our rubber gloves on, grab it out of the ground and place it on the blue tarp that I described earlier. This is just a portion of some of the flesh and charred bone, broken bone that we had uncovered at that time. It still has some dirt on the charred flesh, but there's bone fragments, there's some more bone fragments, some bone there, and the rotted, charred flesh that was attached to that bone. When I testified earlier about the mass, the clump of flesh and bone that was placed into the melted green bucket, that's what you're looking at here. You can see the part of the plastic green bucket. There's parts of bone sticking out here. This area here is all burnt flesh, fatty tissue. There's organs that weren't completely burnt through all the way. Like it was just placed in the bucket and kind of stayed there. So we dug around that bucket the best we could. We would get in there and dig by hand with paintbrushes or anything that we can get. Underneath this bucket, you can start seeing the partial remains of a human skull underneath the melted bucket.
Detective, how long did this process take you?
Hours. Like I said, we were only able to get down there on our hands and knees for a couple minutes before we had to have somebody else come relieve us because of the smell. This is a close-up of the partial skull that was under the melted green bucket. It was a plat bucket, and you can see the white lettering. There's an L there, but the bucket itself was melted, and all that was stuffed inside, and underneath there was part of the top of the skull, and we also found a jawbone underneath this portion here that isn't depicted in that picture. After we removed that mass of flesh, after it broke into clumps and we tried to pick it up and it broke up, and we had to by hand pick everything up and put it onto the tarp. That's what was left. It was the moist soil, and so we dug down a little bit more, found some teeth, but that is after we took the teeth and the flesh, everything out of the hole. That's what was left, was the moist soil. We dug down further to make sure that we had found everything, and there was nothing else after that. This was part of the of Tylee that was inside of the bucket that had broken up when we tried to move it onto the mat or onto the tarp. There's bone, charred flesh, rotting flesh. There's part of the top of a skull here. The orbital sockets are there. That's the top of the skull. These are just some of the parts that we had to get out of the ground and placed onto the tarp.
Detective, I believe you testified earlier that on June 10th, you and Detective Ball followed the Fremont County coroner and took these remains to Ada County. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And what did you do with them on June 10th?
June 10th, we dropped them off and left JJ and Tylee with the Ada County coroner in their custody. And we agreed to come back the next morning on June 11th to perform the autopsy.
Okay. And did you do that? Did you go back on June 11th?
We did.
Okay. What was the first thing you did when you got there on June 11th?
Initially, we met with the medical examiner, Dr. Garth Warren. We met in his office. He briefed us with what we were about to go through, kind of walked us through what was going to happen. And at that time, he walked us down a hall. We put on booties on our shoes. We had gloves. We signed in on the whiteboard, everybody that was inside the room. And at that time, Dr. Warren and his team brought out the black body bag that had contained the black plastic bag that we had taken out of the ground that day before.
Okay. What did you observe next?
They cut the seal on the body bag and unzipped the body bag, and it revealed the black plastic bag that had the duct tape. He placed that bag onto the metal table. It still had dirt on it from when we had taken it out of the ground. They took photographs, did whatever they needed to do, and they cut down the center of the black plastic bag.
Okay. When they cut down that plastic bag, what did you observe?
I saw a little boy in red pajamas. He had a white plastic bag around his head, several layers of duct tape from his chin to his forehead area. His arms were duct tape with several layers of duct tape. His arms were folded like this across his chest. You can see that. His feet were also duct taped and bound. He had a white and blue child's blanket placed on top of him.
Okay. What did you observe happen next?
Dr. Warren cut open the bag that was wrapped over JJ's head, exposing what was underneath. And underneath that white plastic bag, there was another layer of duct tape across his mouth from jawline to jawline.
Okay. And then what happened?
He then cut the duct tape away from his arms to expose his wrists and his forearms. And when he did that, there was also another level of duct tape wrapped around his wrists. So his wrists were bound this way. Yeah.
Did you remain for the entirety of J.G. Vallow's autopsy?
I did.
Once that duct tape was removed, what did you observe?
Through the videos and pictures that we had seen of JJ for the last 8 months, the nonstop looking, the tips coming in, everything we had obtained and looked at, I was able to recognize that same little boy lying on the table to be J.J. Vallow. He had the same haircut. It was short on the sides, long brown hair on the top. So I recognized him as JJ.
Okay. Was there anything else that was that stood out to you during that autopsy?
His pajamas were soaked with body decomposition. He still had on his pull-up nighttime diaper. There was some visible bruising on his arms that the medical examiner had pointed out to us.
Detective, upon the completion of the autopsy of J.J. Vallow, what did you do?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Upon the completion of J.J. Vallow's autopsy, what did you do next?
Dr. Warren brought in the second set of remains of Tylee. He undid the body bag. Once he saw what was inside the body bag, he had advised us that there wasn't anything he was going to do that evening, that we can come back the next day. And so at that point, we left the coroner's office.
Okay. Detective, do you recognize those exhibits?
Yes, I do.
What do they purport to be?
J.J. Vallow, in the condition that we first saw him after they cut open the black plastic bag.
So are these photos from the autopsy?
They are.
Detective, what did you observe in State's Exhibit 12A?
This is the first time we saw J.J. once they cut down the black plastic bag that revealed what was inside. That's J.J. with the white plastic on his head. You can see where we originally cut the plastic when he was in the ground to reveal his brown hair. But the amount of duct tape over his face, over his arms, the body decomposition is kind of what caught our attention.
Okay. Is that the blanket? Is the blanket you referred to earlier in that picture?
Yes, that's the blue and white child's blanket that was placed on top of him.
Okay. Detective, what did you observe in State's Exhibit 12B?
That's the legs of JJ. He's still wearing the Skechers socks. Still has on the red pajama pants, and his ankles are also bound with duct tape.
Were you able to observe any decomposition fluid in that area of that's shown in that picture?
Yes, it's hard to see in the picture, but the whole bottom half of his red pajamas were soaked with body decomposition.
Thank you. Detective, what did you observe in State's Exhibit 12C?
This is after the medical examiner first cut down the white plastic bag. Like I testified earlier, he had a strip of duct tape around his mouth from jawline to jawline. As you can see, his skin's going through various stages of decomposition. But he was still recognizable with the brown hair and facial features that we had seen in the photographs for the last 8 months.
Detective, what did you observe in State's Exhibit 12D?
That's the white plastic bag that was placed over JJ's head. It appeared to be the waffle-style type expandable trash bag that people normally put in their kitchen. It had a red drawstring. But that's what was over his head. And what you're looking at, there's pieces of duct tape that were attached to that. And this is just body decomposition that was inside the plastic bag from his face.
And what did you observe in State's Exhibit 12E?
That's a picture of JJ, still with the duct tape around his mouth, just a close-up picture. Like I testified earlier, you could still see the long brown hair, the shape of his head. It was very easily to identify that little boy on the table as the one we had been looking for the last 8 months.
Lori's attorney requests to Judge Boyce that his client wishes to waive presence of her testimony as it was emotional for her. Her mental health and her fragile state are a reason, and the defendant can waive presence. But the prosecution was basically like, no, absolutely not. Lori needs to be here. Lori needs to be in the courtroom. So Judge Boyce said that he carefully considered this request, but the request was denied, which, thank God. So Lori has to stay. Apparently, Lori was not happy with this at all. Her arms were folded and she could barely look up, and from our court insider, she overheard from many people present that this was the most visibly upset that they have ever seen Lori in any court appearance or any hearing since she was originally arrested back in 2020. Now here's a message from my contact. The pictures are very graphic. I have never seen a picture like Tylee's charred flesh and bones, hands cut off. JJ, you see the bag that he was in and then himself with duct tape everywhere. Tammy's face stayed on screen for 10 minutes while the prosecutor was doing the opening statement. It's graphic. We were warned, but I think that no one thought it would be like this, and from what I have been told, there is many more as the trial goes on. You see the detectives on their hands and knees looking for more remains of Tylee. The hole where they were digging. The top of what was JJ's head wrapped in plastic surrounded by dirt. The black bag that was pulled out with JJ, and the picture of JJ wrapped in plastic wrap and duct tape. Lori Woodcock had his head down and in his hands and was crying, and Lori would not look in his direction. Jared Wilmore testified next. He oversees Madison County jail calls between inmates or video visits that are recorded or stored. He played the infamous phone call between Lori and Chad on the day that the search happened when Chad tells her that they're searching the property.
Hello? Are you okay? No, they're searching the property.
The house right now?
Yeah. So, Mark means we'll be talking to you.
Okay. What, are they in the house?
No, they're out in the property.
Are they seizing stuff? Again?
They're searching. Logical. We'll see what transpires. They don't
What do
really...
you do? Pray.
What?
What do you want me
Yeah,
to
pray. Pray.
What can I do for you?
Doing pretty calm. I love you.
Again, with this call, like I said in my previous video, listen to what they're not saying. Lori isn't saying, oh my God, why would they think my kids would be in your yard? That's insane. How could they even think that we would be involved? Nothing like that. Instead, she's asking, should I pray? What can I do for you? Now remember, Lori hasn't heard this call. This call became public during one of Chad's preliminary hearings, so Lori gets to hear this with everyone in court. Lieutenant Powell with Fremont County testified next. He went into the investigation into Tammy's death and saying that it began due to her age, her being healthy at the time, no autopsy, the circumstances around her death, like Chad getting remarried literally right after, and him and Lori being seen around Rexburg looking like a love-crazed, hormone-fueled couple and teenagers just all over each other. They showed pictures of Tammy's grave and a backhoe that was used to exhume her body. Tammy was shown inside the casket, dressed in white LDS temple clothing, and from there she was taken in for an autopsy, and then taken back to the funeral home. Melanie was Lori's best friend and host of the Feel the Fire podcast that was on part 1 of the Vallow video. She was with Lori at the conference in 2018 in Utah, when Lori and Chad met for the very first time. She said that whenever she first met Tylee, she could tell that there was tension in Lori and Tylee's relationship. She met JJ around the same time, and she said that Lori was affectionate and loving to him. Lori sang a song to him while she put him to bed, and Lori was also very flirty and interested in Chad, according to Melanie. Chad told her that she was married to him in a past life. Chad told Lori that she was married to the Book of Mormon prophet Moroni in a past life as well. Okay. Lori first taught Melanie about multiple probations, which means past lives, then Chad. But Lori learned it in detail from Chad, and they would both talk to Melanie about it. After Lori and Chad met in 2018, Lori told Melanie that she and Chad had been married 5 or 6 times before. Lori and Chad also went to a temple in November of 2018, when Chad was in town for a conference and Charles was out of town. Apparently, they went to the temple that weekend and they were sealed together by Jesus Christ. Okay. Also this weekend, no shame at anybody who gets sealed, but Lori is like crazy. So, also this weekend, Chad snuck into Lori's room at night, and they apparently had sex, while Tammy and Charles were alive, and while they were definitely still married to both of them. Let's talk about a scandal. If you watch Vanderpump, you get what I mean. Then Melanie talked about how Lori believed that she was part of the 144,000 referred to in the book of Revelations, that she would be endowed with power, and that she was an exalted goddess. And Melanie said, and I quote, "Lori told me that those who signed contracts with Christ were light, and those who signed contracts with Satan were dark." But she only started talking like this after she met Chad, apparently. Lori and Chad taught this ideology to Melanie and a few other women that they were close with, including Alex Cox and Lori's niece, Melanie. Lori told Melanie that those who were light and dark could switch to the other side. Lori told Melanie about people being possessed, and Melanie said that Chad told Lori that Charles was possessed, and he had become dark. Lori also told Melanie about a dream she had, and that Charles and JJ had been in a car accident, and Charles was killed in a car accident and wouldn't be coming back before January 1st, 2020. When that didn't happen, Melanie asked Lori about it, and Lori said Satan interfered with the plan. Lori did not use the term zombie in the beginning, but after weeks of castings and talk of evil spirits, it evolved to calling them zombies, which this is, people with evil spirits in their body. This is what they referred to them as. So Chad was present at one casting. Now, Charles was dead at this point, but there were other castings. For Brandon Boudreau, and Lori said that Brandon had an evil spirit and was dark from the beginning, but then became high-level dark, part of Adolf H., you know who I mean, I can't say it on YouTube, his group in a past life. Chad and Lori both believed their spouses would die, and then they would be together. Ned was the first named spirit that entered Charles' body, but apparently then Ned left, and then another spirit named Garrett came in and was cast out, and then Hiplos entered Charles. The people who were deemed dark were Charles, Brandon, Adam Cox, Lori's other brother, Tylee, then Kay, then Barry Cox, which is her dad, and then at the very end, JJ, as well as other random people. Melanie said that the definitions of dark, zombie, and who was light or dark was constantly evolving and changing over time, and that all of this information was relayed to Lori from Chad. Melanie stayed at Lori's house and spent the night at Lori's house the days prior to Charles dying, but then she left when Alex came over. Lori said that Alex needed to protect her and that she needed to leave, and that's when Alex shot Charles. Lori told Melanie about Charles dying and said that the spirit told Lori to take Charles's phone, which made Charles mad. Then Tylee came out with a bat, and Lori told Tylee to protect her mom, and that Charles was confrontational, and Alex went to get his gun, came back, and then shot Charles. Chad and Lori were happy after Charles's death. Lori had multiple phones and one just for Chad, and they often met up in hotels and other places where they could be alone. They were intimate while Charles and Tammy were alive, but Lori felt that it was okay because it was according to God's will, since remember, they had a mission and had been married in past lives. Melanie was asked by the prosecutor if Lori ever indicated concerns about taking care of JJ. And Melanie said, right before he was killed, she said it was hard to be with JJ while being with Chad, and that she would ask Kay if she could watch JJ from now on. There we go, she's trying to get rid of him. The last time Melanie saw Tylee was right before they moved to Idaho. In mid-September 2019, Melanie came up to Idaho where her and her boyfriend David Warwick stayed at Lori's house. Melanie asked where Tylee was, and Lori said that she was at BYU. Lori also said that Tylee's stuff was in storage, and after that, Tylee didn't come up at all. During this trip, Lori told Melanie that JJ had an evil spirit in him. Again, this information was relayed to Lori from Chad. Lori said that JJ would say things like, "I love Satan," or climb on the refrigerator above top cabinets, and that he was changing or becoming more difficult and different, which is the exact same thing she had said about Charles before his death, that he was changing too. This part of her testimony really bothered me, but apparently when JJ was being hyperactive, or just a 7-year-old basically, Melanie saw Chad take JJ upstairs. And when Chad came back downstairs, his neck was red, and when they asked Chad why his neck was red, it was because JJ scratched him. She didn't go more in depth, but this is my question for this. Why was JJ scratching? Is it because he was upset, confused, didn't know who this guy was very well? And also, Chad is a little over 6 feet tall, and JJ is 7 years old. So how is JJ scratching his neck? Was Chad getting in his face? Could he have been on top of JJ? It makes me sad to think that JJ was scared and didn't like whatever Chad was saying to him or doing to him, or whatever was happening. I don't know. Melanie said that the last time she saw JJ was when Alex Cox took him upstairs on September 22nd, the last day that anyone ever saw him again, and the day of the photo of JJ in the red pajamas. Chad asked David Warwick not to share about his relationship with Lori. Tammy was still alive at this point and was a good wife, according to Chad. It was not the Lord's will for Chad to get divorced, and the Lord didn't want him to get divorced because he would be penalized and lose his exaltation and standing with God. After Melanie went back to Arizona, Melanie stayed in touch with them. Then a few days before Thanksgiving, Chad called and told Melanie if the police called to not answer the phone, and then later asked Melanie to say that JJ is with her. Melanie said, "Well, wait, isn't JJ with Kay?" Later on, Lori called Melanie and asked her to take a photo of random kids at the movie theater and send it to her, after Lori told the police that JJ was with Melanie in Arizona. Lori told Melanie that Kay was after her brother Adam Cox and her dad Barry Cox. She told her that JJ's life was in danger and that Kay was trying to kidnap him. Melanie never had JJ with her, but Melanie did lie to police and state she once did have JJ with her, but that he was on his way back to Idaho. Then later, she started feeling weird about everything, so she called the police and told them what was going on. And then she recorded the phone call that was in Chad's preliminary hearing. And when she confronts Lori and Chad about why they told the police that JJ was with her, and pretty much told them that she thinks they are being deceived, and that whatever is going on is not right, it's not within the scripture, and that they are wrong about things. Now in the phone call, you can tell Lori is getting pissed. So you can imagine how mad she was listening to this phone call for the first time. Again, this was another situation where even though the public had heard this phone call, Lori hadn't.
I just want to ask you a question, if you don't mind, Lori.
Yeah,
I want to know, remember we talked about JJ going to Kay's house, and you told me he went there, and now he's not there? I was wondering what happened.
well, I had to live in somewhere else because of her actions. So,
Was she doing something? Like, was she trying to come get him or something? Or, like, trying to kidnap him?
well, she said that a couple times before, but
Maybe when they're done,
there's a lot of things,
yeah.
Nellie.
I know, it sounds like it. I'm just worried for you guys because, you know, he's missing, and, you know...
I know exactly where he is. He's perfectly fine with me.
Okay, well, I hope so.
She takes care of.
I think that you have been very deceived by Satan. I believe that he has tricked you. And I don't believe that what you're doing is correct. I just don't. I mean, Tammy dies, and then your husband died, and then he's missing. It just doesn't sound like God's plan to me. It gives me a gut feeling, like in my gut, it feels weird. It doesn't feel right. I don't have peace about it. I never have felt 100% peace about it. I always felt like a little weird in my stomach about all these things.
You know me, Mel. You know me. This does not sound like you. This sounds like you've been influenced by somebody dark who wants you to believe dark things and have fear of the celestial world.
I don't have fear.
You obviously do.
No, I have a peace of conscience, and I can see clearly.
I wrested the scriptures?
We can do that, and I feel that you have. Our belief systems.
Do I wrest the scriptures? Is that what you're accusing me of at this point?
I feel that you have.
Why do you feel that way? I need an explanation on this.
Because if you look, like the scripture just
You read the scriptures every single day? You know?
Why know you read it? I don't doubt that. But this scripture right here says that you will be supported by all against the fiery darts of the adversary. You would have been supported if you had not opened dark portals and dark junk. You would have been safe if you would have obeyed God. He would have had your back. But you have been chased and tortured.
Whether you do this or not,
I'm sorry?
he has your back. So,
well, if he has your back, you would not be able to tell me where you are, and we couldn't find JJ. Like, where is he? I've been asking, where is he? And you know what I mean? Like,
I can tell everything where JJ is right now, and that would not be good, JJ. So, I'm sorry that you don't want me to protect my children, but I would never ask you to not protect your children.
Of course you wouldn't.
So, I can tell that you're just adversarial, Mel. I love you. I'm sorry that you feel this way.
Because I actually do care. I'm sharing what I feel for you because I know your salvation's in trouble for what you've done.
And my salvation is not in trouble at all. And I think you should check that with the Lord again.
Oh, I felt a lot of things from the Lord. And this doesn't feel right.
Well, I'm sorry that you feel that way, sweetheart. I'm sorry that you're friends with all those who are against me. Joseph Smith's friends turned against me.
I'm not friends with people that are against you.
Apparently you are.
I am not. I don't know Kay. I don't know who you're talking about. Your sister, I don't even know what her name or who she is. I don't know any of those people. Why would they contact me anyway? How would I even know about that?
Well, you're friends with Dave, and he's apparently,
Well, David is a very righteous man, and I've always known that grounding about him. And he has a lot of beautiful experiences with the Lord, and these are not the same. You know, when you get the priesthood, as Peter, James, and John shows up, and then he confirms all of those in the circle that are to get it, and everybody's a witness of that. Everybody's a witness that the pattern is in the scriptures. There's no witness that you ever receive what you think you received. Nobody has seen that but you. There's no witness. The witness, Joseph Smith, Oliver Calvary, Martin Harris, the 8 witnesses, they all showed up.
Is there a witness? When Jesus, Heavenly Father, gave that to Joseph Smith by himself in the grove, was there a witness?
No, but they had it later with other people. That was one experience, but others joined in later. When he brought other people into it, they had experiences.
Scriptures, yes or no?
I'm sorry?
Is that in the scriptures, yes or no?
That Joseph was alone when he saw God the Father and Jesus Christ?
Yes.
Yes, he was alone.
He was alone.
But he had to open it up first.
That's not a pattern at all.
Honey, what I'm saying is that after he saw that and other people joined in, they saw the things with him. He wasn't alone. There was a witness for them. There was no witness. Anybody's never seen what you've seen or experienced what you've seen. That's your own witness, but nobody said that.
No, God knows it, and I will never deny it. For my soul would be at stake if I did. So you can say it didn't happen to me, Mel, but if I say it, then I am accountable. You didn't witness it, but I did.
But your behaviors is not, okay, I understand that's what you believe you saw, but this is the thing, as I see, is that your behavior is not one of somebody that's in Christ. Your behavior. What?
Never had any idea that you would be the person of all people to turn me. I cannot believe
I'm asking questions, and I am concerned for you. That is what somebody does when they care.
You don't sound like you're concerned. You sound like you're accusatory. You do not sound concerned. You sound pissed off.
I'm not. I am troubled. Maybe that's the better word. Troubled. Because these things, like you being with Chad,
Melanie was asked about Tammy. She said Lori was eager to move to Idaho to be with Chad and originally was frustrated that Tammy wasn't yet dead. Lori had thought that Tammy would get into a car crash, and it didn't happen, so Lori moved to Rexburg before Tammy's death, and Lori seemed happy after she died, similar to her feelings after Charles had died. She also discussed how Lori believed dreams would come true. Melanie talked to Alex, who gradually learned about belief system, and he really did believe these entities, or these zombies being Charles, Tammy, JJ, and Tylee, and knowing that Chad and Lori wanted them to all pass away. Melanie told Alex she didn't 100% believe in everything that they were talking about, but Alex said that he believed it 100%. Melanie also talked about the trust scale that Chad had made, and Melanie ranked at the top of that trust scale. Melanie described the trust scale as vibrations and translations. The more vibrations someone has, the more spiritual they are. As people became translated, Lori explained that she would get younger, her menstrual cycle would continue, she would not have menopause, things like that. Also that she wouldn't need to eat. Just really weird things. So Melanie asked Alex what happened to JJ, and Alex responded, "You don't want to know." Now here's a message from my contact. Lori immediately stared down Melanie. The two of them shared glances through the whole testimony. The mood was very tense in the courtroom. Multiple times throughout the testimony, Lori was whispering to her attorneys and boldly staring at Melanie with no expression. By the time her testimony ended, Lori had a frown on her face and arms crossed while she exited the room. Next, we got to hear Chad's call to a funeral home in Arizona, the same day that Charles died. Now, this is just crazy, so take a listen.
We just had a death in the family, and we really don't want anything but a cremation and then to send the cremains to a family in Louisiana. Just a simple, nothing other than a cremation and sending him to his family for a service in Louisiana. So is there any way to know a ballpark price on that?
Yes, and I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Let me transfer you over to the director who can assist you with the pricing. What is your name, please?
It is Chad Daybell.
How do you spell the last name, please?
D-A-B-A-L, Daybell.
How are you related to the person who passed?
I'm his nephew.
And then also, this is for the Valley of the Suns in Chandler, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, he lives there in Chandler. I live in Iowa, so I'm just trying to help out.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yes, what is your uncle's name for reference, please?
He is John Daybell.
His last name?
Well, D-A-B-A-L. The same. John. Uh-huh.
Do you have a middle name?
Myron?
M-Y-R-O-N?
Yeah.
And Chad, what is your phone number in case we get disconnected?
I mean, really, this guy is just so beyond sketchy. So we knew that before Alex died, Chad had given him a blessing, where he said that many angels would be there to protect Alex, and that he was serving God's highest missions, etc. Well, apparently, this was all recorded. And there really isn't a way for me to describe this at all that will do it justice into just how unbelievably, dark and sick Chad is. But let me just set the stage really quick. You can hear Alex sobbing while Chad is talking to him. Chad literally sounds like Warren Jeffs. And then, at times when Chad is talking, he even starts crying.
I am Chad Daybell. It is November 24th, 2019, Sunday afternoon, 5:15 p.m. We're going to give Alex Lamar Cox a patriarchal lesson. Alexander Lamar Cox. On this special day, I lay my hands upon your head to give you a patriarchal blessing. As part of the member of the Church of the Firstborn, that you have earned the privilege to be a member of. In the low realm, to condescend as a god, to help us. You have already assisted us in ways that can never be repaid. Go among the people and testify as a prophet that they can make it. You'll share your own experiences of overcoming adversity, and through your example, they will rise up. You will give tremendous blessings to them, raise their vibrations, and be like a brother to many of these fathers who may have had doubts, but through your strength, they will look to you as a hero, and you'll bring entire families that have been sanctified, should survive. Little children, I see you gathering up little children in your arms, saving them from floodwaters. Just having a collage of moments that await you in this life, rescuing the pure and innocent, leading them to safety. Much like described in the renewed earth, you will be there. It will bring you great joy to help Mother Earth transfer to a terrestrial realm, to burn away the celestial refuse that are moving towards translation and transfiguration, and that the Lord will be with you at all times.
On Friday morning, Detective Duncan was on the stand talking about cell data and information found in Charles Vallow's iCloud account. This includes the emails that Lori had written acting as Charles, asking Chad to come out to Arizona to help ghostwrite a book for him. It also included several text messages between Charles and Lori, and is basically calling her out for being a hypocritical liar after Lori told her family that he was the one who had cheated. It also included Lori's text messages to her brother Alex and Lori's text to Chad in 2019. Now, guys, the amount of text messages and emails that were read is unbelievable. They were digital trail losers and just completely idiotic, so much so that I'm actually going to have to do like a completely different video where we do a deep dive on all of the communications, because there are so many and it's so insane and so cringe. But just to give you a taste of what I'm talking about here, let me give you a little snack, okay? A message from Chad to Lori on July 26th, 2019 says, "I'm a grown-up version of Harry Potter who has to live with the Dudleys in his little space under the stairs. Every few weeks I get to escape and have amazing adventures with my goddess lover, but then I have to return to my place under the stairs, feeling trapped. But I sense permanent freedom is coming." Okay, first of all, I've never seen Harry Potter, but that message, if I ever received that, I'd be like, you are a weirdo, get the freak away from me. Sorry, I shouldn't cuss. But I mean, yeah, I can imagine he would feel trapped after he gets to go out acting like he just won the Bachelorette and won Lori's love, and gets to act as if he's a whole new person, not the quiet, mousy, geeky, gravedigger loser Chad that lives in literally a 1980s time capsule when he went home. It is so bad, guys. Next, Zulema is called to the stand, Alex's wife. Now remember, Zulema was Lori's brother Alex's brand new wife at the time of his death. Zulema said that she met Lori in early fall 2018 at Melanie Gibb's house. Melanie was having a meeting at her house and she invited Zulema to come over and see Lori speak. Zulema and Melanie met at a church and were in the same ward. When Zulema met Lori at Melanie's house, Lori testified that angels had visited her, including the angel Morani, which I think that's who she was married to as well, and she was a personal witness of Jesus Christ. Zulema said it was significant when Lori said that she was a witness of Jesus Christ, because it means that Lori would have seen Jesus, and this would be the highest spiritual experience a person could have. Lori said angels put names in the computer, for her to take to the temple. She was there when Lori met Chad and saw her being extremely flirtatious and putting the moves, her words, on Chad because, remember, she was obsessed with Chad, obsessed with his books. She was obsessed with this famous author, Chad Daybell, who was basically bankrupt and had absolutely nothing to show for it. real famous Chad. Zulema talks in depth about her experiences with Chad and Lori. She really believed Chad and Lori and didn't question anything that either of them told her. In 2018, after preparing a people's conference, Zulema wasn't going to go to Lori's house. You know, the get-together that turned out to be a romp rendezvous for Chad's loins of fire. And the loins of fire are Chad's words, by the way, and not mine. But Zulema ended up going because Chad said he really wanted her to go, because Chad wanted to give Zulema a blessing. Chad ended up giving Zulema a blessing, and during the blessing, he told her that she was a very special person, that she was going to do some amazing things in the future, and he was grateful to know her. Later, Lori invited Zulema to go to lunch. When they met, Lori made a diagram explaining how many worlds there are, how many past lives one person has, and how people are either light or dark. Zulema doesn't recall how Lori explained where she got the information, but Zulema assumes it came from Chad because he was the one who had given Zulema her light and dark scale rating. It all goes back to Chad. That's the reoccurring theme here. Zulema said that Lori told her that she had slept with Charles twice, not knowing that he was possessed. Which, this is a side note and didn't happen in court, but there's a phone call where Melanie said that Lori had an extremely high sex drive. Lori later told Zulema toward the end of March that she wanted a group of women to meet so that Lori could show them and teach them some things. The women met at Zulema's house at the end of March. Nicole, Christina, Serena, Melanie, Gibb, Lori, and Zulema were there. Lori had a whiteboard and drew the same diagram that she had at the restaurant. Lori taught about the multiple lives, the light and dark scale, and Lori gave Zulema a sticky note with her prior lives, and all the other women received theirs too. Lori told the women they needed to cast out the demon from Charles and said that they needed to do a casting on him. All of the women believed what they were doing had value. Lori was very convincing and apparently has a charming way of expressing things that are believable. Lori had expressed before that she had been visited by heavenly beings. At the end of this casting, Lori called Chad to verify if it worked. Chad told Lori it worked, but then later Lori and Chad said even though the demon had been cast out, another, more powerful and skillful demon named Ned had come into Charles. So they did another casting that Chad again said worked. After the casting, Lori called Chad and was very confident that it had worked. Lori had told the group that they needed to fast like Jesus did and that they could not eat until after the casting. Lori and Chad originally said Alex was a first creation, meaning it was his first time on Earth, and he wasn't as spiritual as the other people, so certain things could not be discussed in front of him. Then Chad and Lori said Alex had been exalted in other creations and had been put on other Earth-like planets multiple times. Because of this, he was now a powerful spiritual being. Alex believed this hook, line, sinker, and was very excited to find out who he was. Zulema said if someone is dark or a demon, that they are considered dangerous, and that Alex believed this more than anybody else. Lori said that Ned had been removed, but now once again a more powerful demon had possessed Charles, and this time it was a demon expert named Hiplos that had done the same things for hundreds of years. This is like a Marvel movie. Lori said this was a powerful demon, and the castings were not working. Lori said that Charles moved to Texas because there were doctors to help people who were possessed by demons, and that they could help keep the bodies alive. Alex was aware of all of this. So Lori also always told Zulema that she had a connection with the number 711. Lori mentioned it all the time and said that she has a spiritual connection with the number. So Lori told Zulema that it was 7/11, July 11th, when Charles died. So his death was orchestrated by God and Hiplos had been delivered to her and Alex. Or, you could just say Alex shot him. I think that's more likely. Either one. Guys, this is so crazy. Lori told Zulema certain things needed to happen before the second coming, and she needed to cleanse the earth of evil spirits. She was taking steps to usher in the second coming, and Charles's death was one of those steps. Lori told Zulema that Chad told her that Lori needed to move to Rexburg, Idaho, because it was going to be a refuge as other countries were going to invade the United States. Chad said soldiers and warriors would defend Rexburg, and the area had been prepared as a place of safety. And that's why Lori moved to Rexburg, since that was part of her so-called mission. Lori told Zulema that she was receiving Social Security benefits from the death of Tylee's dad, and JJ was receiving Social Security from Charles dying because she had been married for over 10 years to Charles. The total amount of all of these checks that Lori was fraudulently cashing and telling herself God was giving to her was around $6,000 a month. So she said she didn't need to work, obviously. In September, Zulema went to stay with Alex, but she says she never saw Tylee and asked Lori where Tylee was. And Lori said she had to be freed. Zulema asked what she meant by that, and Lori lifted her hand, put it up to Zulema's face, and said, "Don't ask." Before Lori moved to Rexburg, Lori told her a few times that Tylee had been possessed by a demon named Hillary. Lori said a few times that JJ was being attacked by demons. JJ had that service dog named Bailey, remember? And Lori said that the evil spirits attacking JJ were now going into the dog because it was easier to get into him, so that's why Lori sold the dog after Charles died. She also said that Lori and Chad were aggressively trying to convince her to move to Rexburg, Zulema that is. Zulema had a job and family in Arizona, though, so she couldn't move. Lori told her not to worry about that, though, because Melanie, her niece, had enough money for all of them. Now, Melanie had recently received a large divorce settlement from Brandon, the guy who Chad was now calling such a dark spirit that was in, Adolf's circle, who was suspected that Alex shot at in the camouflage and tried to kill with the silencer out the Jeep, the whole thing. Chad gave Zulema a blessing and said that the Savior was standing right next to him. Chad said that the Savior was telling her that all of her sins were forgiven and that it was time for her to leave Babylon and move to Rexburg. Chad also told Zulema and Alex that they would be getting married, and later the subject came up about who they should marry. Lori and Chad were teaching that a man and woman should always be together because they were a stronger entity together and could have the priesthood. Alex and Zulema had gone on one date before Alex moved to Rexburg. He was funny, and apparently they had fun talking, watching movies, and hanging out, and then in the background, you have Chad and Lori pushing them to get married. Now this is where it gets even crazier. Zulema said that she had learned that Lori and Chad were in Hawaii and got married, and that Alex was getting frustrated because Lori wasn't answering any of his text messages. Alex said, "Can you believe they're ignoring me after how much I helped them?" Zulema was also with Lori the night that Tammy was approached by someone with a gun and in that ghillie camouflage suit on. Lori said that Tammy had been possessed by a demon, and she needed Zulema's help to cast out that demon. The evil spirit was named Viola, and they were going to be using the cosmos to cast the spirit out. Lori was telling Zulema how wonderful she was, until the phone rang, and she was very angry. She was on the phone saying someone was an idiot and someone was a moron. And then once Lori was off the phone, Lori says, "This idiot can't do anything right." Alex and Zulema got married on December 1st, 2019, and shortly after that, she received a phone call from Melanie Gibb. Melanie was stressed out and upset and telling Zulema that she believed Lori and Chad were deceived, and that she was extremely worried about Tylee and JJ, especially since they had asked her to lie about JJ. So Zulema asked Alex, how can they not know where JJ is and if he is with Kay or not? To which Alex responded, "I know," and then did not say anything at all. Alex passed away on December 12th, 2019, the day after Tammy's body was exhumed and just a few weeks after marrying Zulema. And before he died, he told Zulema, "I hope I'm not their fall guy." Zulema pressed more and more, asking Alex, "What do you mean, fall guy? Fall guy for what?" And Alex finally responded by saying, "I'm either a man of God or I'm not." Also, before Alex died, he told Zulema that if anything happened to him, there was a bag of money for her in the closet. Almost like he knew something was about to happen. Or he knew he was the fall guy. Going back to Chad's so-called teachings, Chad believed that he was the brother of Heavenly Father and a Jesus in one creation, and in another creation he was the Holy Ghost. He was the highest being of all, and he chose Lori as his wife, and Alex believed this, absolutely 1000%. Zulema says that Chad showed her the rating of dark to light chart at a meeting in early August of 2019. On the chart, Tylee's rating was a 4.1 dark. Lori and Chad taught every time a demon is passed out, there is 2 minutes of a window that is left as an opening for another one to come in, like someone being in limbo. Zulema was asked by the prosecutor, if the spirit leaves the body, how do you destroy the body to keep an evil spirit from entering? And she responded, burning it, taking it apart, or binding the body are all ways used to destroy the body. Which I just want to say really quick is an interesting take, because we know both JJ and Tylee, there's evidence of burning, dismemberment / taking apart, and binding of a body with all of the duct tape with JJ. All 3 of those things were included in those children's deaths. Zulema also recalled a time when she said, Lori said as a joke, well, Charles has $1 million life insurance policy, so if it doesn't work out, I could put pills in his water. Zulema asked Alex how he felt after shooting someone following Charles's death, and Alex responded, he was a zombie. Lori told Zulema that JJ was going to have a very short life, and at a meeting in August of 2019, Chad said JJ would have a very short life because he would come back as Colby's child. Lori also said that the rules didn't apply to her. So Friday wrapped up with all of Zulema's crazy testimony, and it was a wild week for week 1 of the Vallow trial, to say the least. And here's the thing. We have that insider in the courtroom. It's suspected that Colby might be testifying next week, Lori's son, because apparently he was in the parking lot after court, and there's suspicion that maybe he was supposed to testify today, but they didn't get to him. So we'll see what happens as we go into week 2 of this trial. I can't imagine what more bombshells we're going to learn, but I know that we're only scratching the surface here. So like the Letitia Stout trial trial recaps that I'm doing week to week, if you find this helpful because it is such a complex case, let me know in the comments so I know to keep doing these ones week to week as well. Or just, give a thumbs up on this video so I can gauge the interest that way. Because I know that whether you're following this case, Gannon's case, or both, that is a lot of trial footage to consume in 1 week. It's like 80 plus hours between the two. So let me know if you find these recaps helpful, and I will continue to do them. So let me know what you guys think so far about the testimony we've heard, about some of these recordings, all of this stuff, and we'll see what happens next week and who is called as a witness to the stand, and if Colby comes and what he says about her mom. And even more interesting than what he says, I'm more interested in what Lori's reaction and facial expressions will be. Also, if you want like a full deep dive of the timeline of events and everything that was going on behind the scenes with Lori, Chad, Alex, all of the shadiness, all of the red flags, like way more of a deep dive, I did a part 1 and a part 2 on my podcast, and I referenced it a few times in this video, I know. But if you haven't checked that out and you do want to just kind of get like fully up to speed on literally all of the details about this case, check that out. I have the video versions here on YouTube, or you can listen to the audio uncensored versions on my podcast, which is called Serialously, and it's on all podcast platforms. So make sure that if you're not subscribed yet and you want to follow along with those updates, you hit subscribe really quick. Also, as always, it is so much faster for me to give updates by just like going on Instagram on my story and like posting them before jumping on YouTube. So if you're not following along there yet, I highly suggest doing so there. It's @_Annie Elise. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in with me today, and we are going to continue covering this trial together. All right, until the next case, stay safe. Bye.